Welcome to Coffee and Crypto with Lee and Jimmie. I am Lee Reiners, joined as always by Jimmie Lenz. Jimmie, on this day in 1935, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the Social Security Act into law.
Wow, that was a prolific in so many ways. I have a lot of views about Social Security and socialized
Oh
medicine,
boy,
which we do have in the United States, right?
socialized
It's called
medicine.
Medicare,
Yeah,
and it is socialized medicine, whether you like it or not. Whether people,
a lot of people do. Medicare
I'm
for
going to go
all.
out, I'm going to go out on a controversial limb here, and I'm probably going to get a lot of feedback for this.
Oh boy,
I
here
think
we
there
go.
should be a lifetime maximum for Medicare. I
Mm,
think there should be a life. If you look and see right now, I mean, every generation we see this, but this one it's getting closer and closer. The the operating budget of Social Security is evaporating quickly, partially because of just the demographics of the world. Right, we're like the rest of the world, less young people, more older people, living
yeah,
longer and drawing
yeah.
more than they ever put in. The same is true in the Medicare side of things. As you know, one of my daughters works in the medical field, and and she does a lot of analytics works, and we talk about this all the time. The amount of money in the last very last years over in comparison with your lifetime spend is phenomenal. And I got to tell you, I think we need to have a lifetime cap
So
on
what?
the
So
amount.
what then? You just die of poverty?
No, a lifetime cap on Medicare, not
Well,
on
what?
not on Social Security. We can't do it on Social Security.
Well, yeah, but what if you get sick and you're at the cap and you can't pay for your medical care?
You know, there is because we have these conflicting forces in the United States in particular because we're a very litigious society, and doctors are in this place where they will overtreat, overtest because they don't want to get sued. And this is a way to keep that happening. But at the end of the day, who's footing that bill? And I see, I have, I am around a lot of older people. I'm not going to mention any names or anything, but I do have the opportunity to see a lot of older people. They spend a
Yes,
lot of time at doctors.
I've
Do
seen
they?
them. I've
And
seen them
if they
around
were,
Governor's Club.
well,
Uh,
if they were actually paying for that out of their own pocket, would they be as free about their, those kinds of expenses as because they have no skin in the game?
Well, look, we could go on and on
We
about
could go on this
we could
forever,
go on and
but
on about
you
this.
burned Social Security, so I had
Obviously,
to.
obviously we just came through primary season where one of sort of the big issues amongst the Democrats was Medicare for all, and where do you stand on that? And I think it's going to be certainly a big campaign issue in 2028. Back to FDR. He's certainly one of my heroes. Great American. Viewed as a class traitor by many
Yep.
of his era, Jimmie. And really kind of laid the foundation for the modern state as we know it. And in my realm in financial regulation, created the FDIC and deposit insurance. Obviously signed the
Yep.
securities laws, which I think have served our country well. So I talk every fall about FDR and the work of the New Deal, but I certainly think the notion that no one should die in old age because of poverty or lack of medical care is something that I embrace, and I think any enlightened society should embrace. And whatever it takes, we got to find a way to pay for it and make it efficient. And there lies the rub, right? It
There
is
lies the
hard.
rub. I'm actually
Therein lies the
watching a
rub.
documentary on his cousin right now,
Teddy,
on Theodore Roosevelt,
yeah.
and
The new
it's
library just opened in North Dakota. The new
yep.
Teddy Roosevelt Library in North Dakota. It looks amazing. I watched a news segment on it, and how it's just built into the landscape there. So,
People forget
um,
how much time he spent out west
well,
after
it
his
really
wife
made
died.
him. Yeah, it really made him. That's where he went after his wife and his first wife and his mom died on the same
Died on
day.
the same day.
Died on
Yeah,
the same day, and so he traveled west to kind of just clear his head and
yeah,
his lungs because he was a horrible asthmatic,
yeah.
and he tried his hand at being a cowboy, and it really kind of
I
forged
think
his
he became a
identity.
cowboy, right? And
Yeah, he became a
that
cowboy.
was the genesis of the Rough Riders.
That's right. So anyway, new Teddy Roosevelt
Anyway, if
museum.
you guys
Anyway,
want a lesson in
there we go.
history,
That's right.
come to
Well,
beers with
normally we do a
Jimmie.
little weather. I'll do a little weather recap, but I like these this day in history
Yeah,
format. But
I
you can
like
feel
the
free to
stay in
give a weather.
history.
It's just so
The
hot here.
weather's
So
just
what
hot,
else? What else are we gonna
hot and
say other than
humid,
it's hot and steamy? It's
hot
August
and
in North
humid.
Carolina. All right,
Yeah,
Jimmy. Well, let's get into some crypto related topics.
let's
Normally
do
every
that.
week we say, "Oh my gosh, there's so much going on, so much going on." This is actually a relatively light week, believe it or not. I think it's a
Well, I think
function
there
of
was
August.
a lot of people on the border, right? A lot of people on the edge, waiting on clarity, and
Yes,
nothing
waiting.
happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has sort of sucked up all the oxygen in the room, so to speak, and we haven't really gone into it in the last couple of weeks because there's really nothing to go into
Not
other than
much to
just
go
sort
into.
of
Yeah,
legislative posturing, which we don't really need to get into.
nah,
But Senator Thune, Majority Leader Thune, has scheduled a cloture vote for when the Senate gets back into session in September. So
yep.
presumably we will see some votes cast. As of now, it does not appear that they will clear the 60 vote threshold, but at least they'll get people on the record. And I know that's what the crypto industry wants, so they can figure out who to spend their massive campaign war chest against. But in the meantime, Jimmy, we still have regulatory agencies that have a tremendous amount of power to do things. They have exemptive authority, right? They have
Or
the
not.
ability to make rules or not. And so the SEC, so the big news that well, I thought it was going to be the big news today was that the SEC had scheduled a public meeting
Yeah,
to announce a tailored offering regime for certain investment contracts involving crypto assets. Now, that was what was on the sort of the public agenda. It did not, today's meeting did not appear to cover the long touted innovation exemption for tokenized securities.
right.
So, maybe we would have seen it. But anyway, Jimmy, the update as of this
I was going to
morning, right?
say
We're recording this on
right before
Friday.
we went on,
On Friday morning,
before we started recording, you get
I
an
think it was
update.
late last night. I think it was late last night. The SEC canceled it.
Yeah.
Canceled the public meeting. Didn't really give a reason why. So we have to rely on reporting. So Crypto in America is
rely
Eleanor
on
Tarrant,
rumor and
who
innuendo.
we were at rumor and innuendo, which who doesn't like? Who doesn't like
He doesn't like a little
rumor and
rumor and
innuendo?
innuendo.
So according to kind of what we've seen on social media, it appears as though the SEC decided to cancel this meeting for fear that it could complicate passage of clarity, right? And this is actually something that I've been talking about for quite a while because the SEC under Paul Atkins has rolled out a number of initiatives that are obviously favorable to the crypto industry, adopted interpretations of the securities laws that are favorable to the crypto industry. And, surprise, surprise, a lot of these moves dovetail quite nicely with what's in clarity. And so I think the risk has always been that if you do this, meaning that the SEC does all these things, at a certain point, people say, well, why do we need clarity?
Why
Right?
do we
If
need
you've
it?
if
Yeah,
you've
it's already been
effectively
interpreted.
implemented clarity, um, why does Congress need to spend all this time and effort on it? And so specifically around, I think, tokenization, and there's a big debate, involving tokenization and what the SEC can do, should do there. There is a provision in clarity around tokenized securities. And, the concern seems to be that if the SEC went ahead with whatever they're going to announce today, it would have sort of muddied the waters, right?
Yeah.
And obviously clarity is sitting on a razor's edge right now. And that's, again, rumor and innuendo. We don't know all the facts. I doubt
No.
the SEC will say, will come out and say it. I'm wondering, Jimmy, if they're, our good friend Hester, I'm calling her a good friend. I don't know if she'd call me a good friend or not, but I do
I think
like
she
her.
would.
Look, she's obviously come out with some statements about tokenization and being like, look, this is not a way to just, evade the
Right.
securities laws.
No, this isn't an end around. This is not an end around at all.
I'm
It's
wondering, if she's leaving, and so when you're leaving, right, you're more free to kind of speak your mind, and so I'm wondering if she
I
was
think
fully
Hester's
on.
always been pretty good at speaking her mind.
That's a good point. I don't know if that's ever held her back. So
Yeah.
maybe she had some qualms with what SEC was going to do. So anyway, we wait. We wait now for both clarity and for what the SEC was going to
For
do
what the
here
SEC was
around
going to do, yeah.
a new exempt offering for crypto and as well as tokenization exemption. So
You know,
that's
with all
yeah,
of this happening, though, Lee, and I didn't send you anything. I should have sent you this. Damn it, I forgot.
that's okay.
But I work with people that are looking more on the technology side and how to implement this. And there was a company, which I won't mention their name, but there's a company out there that is helping to facilitate banks and credit unions, community banks,
Yeah.
to offer securities. And I went to their website the other day and was looking. They have like 60 or 70 banks. And these are not, banks that are household names. These are, but the fact that you have, that many smaller local, kind of deposit taking institutions that are jumping on the bandwagon to me I mean, if there was a real, if you wanted to do a poll of, kind of the broad spectrum and you
Sure.
see people, taking those kinds of measures, I think it's kind of, that's kind of the writing on the wall. To me, it is
Mm.
when you see a lot of, people that you are in entities that you wouldn't consider major players. This isn't
Yeah.
JP Morgan and Bank of America. When you see places that are, voluntarily moving forward, that are saying, you know what, I'm not going to wait any
Yeah.
longer, and are
Yeah.
getting on board. And I mean, it was pretty surprising that the names, some of them were big institutions, bigger in that sector, and some of them were places I'd never heard of before. But the fact that they had grown to 60 or 70 institutions was pretty amazing to me.
That's well. Let's talk about a big name, um, and your former employer,
Yeah,
Wells Fargo, right?
Wells Fargo.
Now this is a topic that I've been.
Always a precarious place to go with me.
Well, I love it. I love it. I've been dying to get your thoughts on this ever since I added it to last week's agenda, but we
No.
ran out of time. So I will just do a quick setup here and let you take it away. So we'll
Sure.
see where you go with it. But Wells has announced plans to launch tokenized deposits for corporate and commercial clients starting this fall. And the tokenized deposits, Jimmie, will run on a proprietary blockchain platform
Mhm.
that Wells is developing. Now, obviously, we already know that J.P. Morgan, Citi have also, many others, and I think you were referencing some even smaller banks are going ahead with tokenized
Yep.
deposits. What are your thoughts here on your former employer getting into tokenized deposits? Not a lot of detail, though.
Not a lot of detail. I mean, so I think the idea of tokenized deposits is, I mean, it's already been substantiated to some extent, right? We know that places are losing deposits, and to me, the fact that they're rolling out tokenized deposits, large banks are rolling out tokenized deposits. It's an effort to keep deposits there. I mean, so I think for all of these places, I mean, let's face it, big banks are not first movers for the most part. I mean, if you
Hmm.
look at, really world-changing innovation, it ain't done by the big banks, folks. It's done by the small places, and big banks will follow on once they see, hey, the writing's on the wall. I think, my example, I've used it before, but the prime example is Rocket Mortgage, right? Nobody had decent online mortgage applications until Rocket Mortgage came out, was eating their lunch, and they're like, hey, maybe we shouldn't just shrink our
Sure.
webpage down to your
Yeah.
phone. And I think this is kind of the same case. It's a follow-on, the tokenized deposits for corporate clients. Okay, yeah, but if you're a corporate client, you're smart enough to be doing this kinds of thing, or
Hmm.
do you care if it's a tokenized deposit, or are you probably going to use a tokenized money market fund? I'm just guessing here. I'm going to go for the 300 or 400 basis points in yield on a tokenized
A
money
little
market
yield.
fund rather than a tokenized deposit. Now,
Okay.
for the bank, I mean, a tokenized deposit means, it's a different kind of capital, right? In their, in their capital structure. And so they would much, much, much rather have a tokenized deposit
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
it's a benefit to them, whereas a tokenized money market fund isn't. And so I'm guessing they can do whatever they want, but their customers are going to vote with their feet. And I'm guessing they're seeing a fair amount of corporate clients that are starting to use tokenized money market funds and other money market. I mean,
Interesting.
folks, money market funds, and we've talked about this like a million times, have grown tremendously in the last decade. I mean, We're talking $9
Yeah.
trillion in money market funds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not all coming from Lee and me. It's coming from institutions. Large corporate clients are doing this.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't want to leave 300 or 400 basis points of yield on the table every day. And so, I mean, I think it's to me, it's kind of a desperation move. Maybe not a desperation move, but it's
Everyone's
a
doing it.
move. They had to do
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and so they're doing this. But is it going to be? I mean, what? Just ask the basic question: why would anybody use this? Why would anybody use tokenized deposits? I
Yeah.
mean, if
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you want yield. Now, on the other hand, if they come out and say and as you said, this is still early on. Maybe they come out and say, "Hey, we'll match money market fund rates." Okay, now you got it. Now you got something. But
Yeah.
then you're losing, all your yield. But you still get the benefit of the capital. So maybe they'll be smart and do that. It's Wells Fargo, so I
Maybe.
don't have a lot of faith
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that was a pretty tame response considering what I was expecting from you. I know you have
Yeah, no,
but you're. Yeah, I guess that, with age, it's tempering you a little bit. What
maybe
comes
a
a
little
little
bit,
wisdom,
maybe a
and
little bit.
so okay. Well, I was trying to
I know you were.
excite you a little bit. Sorry. Well, I don't really disagree with anything you said. I think the use case is less compelling with Wells Fargo because their client base is largely domestic.
Yeah,
They are a massive a bank, no doubt about it. I mean, and look, this is institutional customers only, right?
yeah,
Corporate customers only. Compared to Citi and J.P. Morgan, which have a massive transaction services business,
sure.
right? They are providing payment services to multinational corporations that have operations throughout the world, who have suppliers and vendors throughout the world. And so I think tokenized deposits and the ability to sort of move money across borders near real time, is obviously going to be very compelling and just makes more business sense for Citi and JP Morgan as opposed to Wells, which,
Yeah,
largely has a domestic customer base. So this kind of strikes me as just sort of following the crowd a little bit. I don't know
yeah.
how big this is going to be for Wells, but it's just because of their business model, I think is just fundamentally different.
It is. It is. And I mean, speaking of tokenized, money market funds, there was the BlackRock announcement this week, which is
Y-
to me. So
Well, that was
we do
last
have,
week, I
so
think.
we do
But
have a
yeah,
little bit of a theme this week, right? Because we have a couple
look
of
at these smooth transitions
stories
here.
on Europe, UK and Europe, and
Yes,
so I don't
yes.
know if you want to give people kind of a rundown of what's going on with this.
Yeah, so this was actually from earlier this month, story in Bloomberg, where BlackRock is launching tokenized money market funds in Europe. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone. Obviously, they are a leader in the tokenized money fund space, starting with Biddle here in the U.S. Larry Fink has talked about tokenization a lot. So now BlackRock is going to offer tokenized versions of its existing BlackRock Institutional Cash Series money market funds. They currently manage a combined $311 billion in assets. The offering will include sterling, euro, and US dollar denominated share classes. The thing that really stood out to me about the article, Jimmie, and I haven't really seen it getting a lot of press, is the blockchain that it's going to be using. I don't know if
Yeah,
you picked up on this,
yeah,
but it is going to be using JP Morgan's Connexus blockchain
yep,
platform, and JP Morgan will continue to serve as a transfer agent for these funds. Now, Biddle originally launched on Ethereum. Now,
yeah.
I think it exists on multiple blockchains now. But I thought that was really incredible that JP Morgan's blockchain is going to be used. Now, I wonder if that's for regulatory reasons. I don't, I'm sure there are
I
money
think it's, I
reasons
think
for
it's, I think
this,
it's
but
just to facilitate. I
uh,
think it's just a better facilitation point. I mean, JP Morgan does this. This is what they do. I think to me, this is kind of that generic, just utility building that it kind of just is branching off of what they already do to some extent, and it's just like, okay, well, we need to open this
yeah,
pipe up
but this
because
is the first I've heard of a third party building on Connexus. right? Up till, and I'm sure that, like, this, it's not the first, and I'm just not following
Probably
that
not the
closely, but
first. I mean, it's pretty big. I mean, for
everything I've heard about Connexus thus far has been, like back to like tokenized deposits.
right.
JP Morgan's tokenized deposits, run on Connexus, right? So this is the first time I've heard of a major third party launching a product on JP Morgan's own proprietary blockchain.
But banks do tend to specialize, right? I mean, they do tend to specialize a little bit, and they do give other banks business because of just the volume and
Yeah.
the volume discounts that you get for those kinds of things. So I'm not
Well, let me
terribly
ask you
surprised.
this: Why
The
use
Connexus unit is
Connexus as opposed to Ethereum? Why is Connexus better than Ethereum?
Well, I think it's probably because it's theirs, and they've already set that up for
But
certain functions. The Connexus functions with
yeah,
inside JP Morgan, and the Connexus group. I mean, is huge. I mean, this isn't like 10 guys in a basement someplace. This is
sure,
like hundreds of people
yeah,
that work in Connexus.
yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I think it's probably the regulatory issues. That look like even with Biddle, you have to have a whitelisted wallet, right?
Right.
So it's not just anyone can go out and buy it and transfer it to any unhosted wallet. So I'm sure I think JP Morgan, given that it's a regulated entity, has sort of built in these regulatory functions up front.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just a lot of ingrained advantages there.
I mean,
So
I think
it'll
that
be interesting to see the uptake there, right?
But I mean, to
You
me,
know?
the other thing that this does is it kind of ties into that last thing we are talking about Wells is this is going to. I mean, one, it's moving into a new market, Europe,
Hmm.
and the UK, which can't get out of their own way. Neither one of them.
Oh boy.
They're going to be talking about this digital euro in 5 years still. I mean, every it comes out constantly. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to be
All the
served
time.
by the dollar, folks. It's already happened. It ain't coming back. But the thing is I think the fact that they've launched this, that they're actually doing this. I mean, if there wasn't an institutional demand, I don't think J.P. Morgan would be doing this. Those are smart
Yeah,
guys over there, and so
very
I'm
smart. Very
thinking,
smart.
this is this is
They
this
don't miss
is
a
this
beat,
is
do
going to
they?
be the. I mean, it's just, why would you not do this if you were an institutional customer? If you were a CFO and you had a lot of cash coming in from around the world, why would you not
Yeah.
use these?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And look, as these things take off, I think one of the arguments that's always sort of undermined the banks, or one of the points that's always undermined the banks' arguments around the stablecoin, rewards loophole here in the U.S. is like, well, look, we have tokenized money market funds,
Right,
right, which are blockchain, like generally speaking, dollar good until they're not. I realize that, but like dollar good, blockchain based instruments. Now, again, most tokenized money market funds are only available to institutional kind of clients, so it's
right,
not as if you can
and
just
right now,
anyone yet, right? But I suspect that will change. So yeah, we'll see if it'll be interesting to see the uptake here in Europe, as you sort of suggested, Jimmy. A lot of headwinds facing Europe's economy, and including the UK, right, which I guess
yeah,
is not formally part of the EU anymore. And interesting story in your favorite newspaper, the FT,
the
titled "Banks'
FT.
Refusal to Take on Crypto Firms Risk Stunting UK Industry's Growth." So there's a handful of policymakers over there in the UK that are sort of viewing digital assets as an opportunity to boost the UK economy, which desperately needs any
Some
help it can
boosting.
get. And the concern is that UK banks, and it's a very concentrated banking sector over there, not like here in the US, folks,
Yeah,
are basically denying services not just to crypto companies. And look, obviously this has echoes of sort of what was happening in the US during the Biden administration. I totally reject the whole choke point 2.0, Operation Choke Point 2.0 narrative. But nonetheless, I think, it's kind of the narrative that the industry has been successful in pushing out there. So it kind of has echoes of that. But I think what was also telling to me was these points about how if you're just a regular Joe Schmo in the UK trying to send money to a crypto exchange to trade crypto, the bank is just not letting you do that.
not letting you do
Like
it,
your
which
your
is
bank
which is
is,
crazy.
yeah, like I don't recall that ever happening here in the US. And look, I've used, I've used crypto exchanges. I
We
have
both,
accounts at
yeah.
crypto exchanges. Like, I haven't put a lot of money there, but I never had it. Like the bank never stopped me.
Yeah.
from moving funds to the exchange. And the sort of the stated reasons were, very paternalistic, basically like, oh, we're worried our customers could lose money,
Yeah.
right? Or like scams. And I get that there are a lot of scams for sure involving crypto, but if someone's moving a couple grand to a crypto exchange, that's, you can't know if that's a scam or not.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so this letter went to I think the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, and the
Right.
heads of the British banks. We'll see. Obviously, there's not the same level of political uproar around this as there was in the U.S. Again, choke point 2.0. But I was kind of surprised at this level of paternalism here by the UK
I don't
banks.
know. I
Maybe I
mean,
shouldn't be.
it seems to be a place that's, as I've said many times, it's driven by regulation and not innovation. It is this is like a dystopian novel that's unfolded over there. That it's all about the machine,
Mm,
and do
the
I mean,
machine.
this institutionalization of this paternalistic, I guess, institutionalization is just
Yeah,
gone so far
too
farther than it
far.
should. And what's happened at the end of the day is, it's limited the ability of people to take risk. And when people can't take risk anymore, guess what? They can't innovate. They can't do anything.
Gotta
And
take
that's
risk.
exactly what we see there. I mean, I don't know what it's going to take, but it seems every year it gets a little bit worse. And I have
Hmm.
friends over there, and they live there, so they're going to stay probably. But everybody is just so dissuaded of doing anything innovative, of opening anything new. I mean, they're and I read the FT every day, and I
Yep,
get to
you
see
do.
their perspective on it. And man, I mean, it is unbelievable. It really is
Yeah. Well, it's
the
just such a
lack of
contrast.
innovation.
Yeah. I mean, like, just compared to like everything happening here right now with like, perpetuals and like prediction markets, and you can't turn on your TV without being inundated with gambling ads, sports book ads and whatnot. It's just like, it
Yeah.
just, we talk about Biff's world all the time, and then you just have, it's like, and then you read the story about like, oh, your bank won't let you send money to a crypto exchange in the UK, and you're just like,
What
man,
the
two
heck?
different, talk about two different worlds, man.
Very
I don't.
different worlds.
Yeah.
And I would think that at some point, somebody over there has to say, wait a minute, there has to be. But it doesn't seem like that voice of reason is either very loud, or maybe it's just quashed all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just not, I mean, there's just not pressure and pushback, like you
What
saw,
happened to the
like I don't know if it's just
families that?
lobbying or just there's not, like conservatism in the Euro in the EU and the UK is very different than like our version of conservatism, which I mean, I guess what is even that anymore? It's just,
Yeah, I don't
megaism, I
know.
guess. But like it's just things like that would just get, they're like the Cato incident, right? Like there's like this machinery in place that would like push back instantly, for things like this that just doesn't exist in the UK. And I get that, this sort of it's been built up here over decades. Like, obviously like the 60s and 70s and, but even like pre-Reagan, like, maybe we were more like the UK in that regard, but then you had this sort of conservative legal movement, right? And sort of the emergence of corporate lobbying. And it just hasn't worked that way in the UK and in Europe. So we'll see. And the Mario Draghi, the Draghi report kind of laid it all out, right?
Yeah.
And folks just don't seem to be following it. So
Well,
anyway,
or maybe
yeah, I want to get your
Lee,
thoughts on a
it's
couple other stories though, because
well,
I know we got,
maybe
go ahead.
something is more core. Maybe it's something that we've talked about before. Maybe Americans are just different.
Well, I think that's for sure you are.
I
That's
mean,
no doubt about that.
I mean, maybe we're just. I mean, because when I look at the rest of the world, there aren't a whole lot of places that embrace innovation like we do here. There aren't a lot of places that embrace risk taking like we do here. For
Yeah,
better or
I mean,
worse, I mean, maybe
that's
we're
true.
just different, and we attract a different kind of people.
I think culture has a lot to do with it, no doubt
Yeah.
about it. All right, Jimmy, let's move on. I want to get your thoughts on tokenized metals.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, metals trading is very different than other types of trading, and you can speak to that better than I
Yeah.
can. It's a very fragmented market. There's a lot of opacity associated with it. Certainly over the years, for those who, retail traders who wanted to get exposure to precious metals, mainly gold. I mean, gold has
Yeah.
always been, of course, the most attractive. We have, ETFs, and that gets you, price exposure, and they seem to work pretty well.
Yeah.
But the story I sent you was also from the FT,
Hmm.
and it was all about how different mining and technology groups are developing tokens linked to metals, including gold, copper, uranium. That was one
Yep.
that really stood out to me.
I don't
Um,
think you can take physical
and
delivery of this stuff, though.
yeah, exactly. And just curious your thoughts on this. If this is better than what exists out there, and I think the issue here is sort of amplified compared to sort of the questions we ask with traditional, like just tokenizing equities, which is like, if you have the token, what do you actually own? Like, what legal rights do you own? And
Yeah.
that wasn't actually clear to me, like kind of reading some of these proposals. What happens if the issuer defaults or goes away or whatnot? Do you actually have a claim on that? Some of these, we're claiming that, oh, well, you could actually redeem the token for metals. I'm like, well, how? Where?
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to take possession? And look, we have, Tether, for instance, has a token, Paxos Gold. So
Yeah.
these products aren't exactly new, and they just haven't taken off. And so, just curious your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, so I do have a few thoughts on this. One, metals are different. Metals trade in the physical form a lot. I mean, there are warehouses full of metals. And so they're different in that respect, in that they do trade physically a lot of metals. Now we have futures on
Yeah,
metals. But futures introduce, some other elements. If you want a direct exposure and you don't want to have to worry about, oh, when do I need to roll this contract over? And oh, I'm going to lose money on, the decay of the premium and all those kinds of things. If you just want direct exposure, I mean, up until now, most people have bought into mining companies, but that's not really direct exposure, right? If I want to get direct exposure to, copper, I mean, I can do it through a copper future. I can go out and buy a bunch of copper, I guess, and then I have to store it and those kinds of things. Or I could invest in a company that primarily mines copper, but they mine a lot of other things too. And so, to me, this is a way for folks to to actually guarantee that. It's and I was thinking about this when I saw the article. I was thinking about this as a hedge instrument in particular, for industrial users.
yeah,
Is this a better hedge than futures? I think it is, in a lot of cases, because you
yeah,
don't pay the same premium. Now it's tacitly like buying things on a spot market, except that you don't have to take delivery. I'm sure there's a
yeah,
delivery fee and there's a storage fee built into it. I mean, there has to be, right? People aren't going to do this for free. But I would think that it's probably less than you would get on the future side. So I would think, from a hedging aspect, and that's another thing. I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand is that when we talk about futures, people always think about speculators and stuff like that. A lot of futures are bought and sold by people that are actually looking to, make delivery or take delivery. I mean, they're done as a
hmm
hedging
yeah,
exercise to lock
sure,
in the price of things. And so I think for for retail, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cool thing. But I think for institutional users, this could get a lot of traction. I really think, in particular,
really,
given the demand for some of the rare earth minerals and some of the
yeah.
commodities associated with different manufactured products. I think this could gain a lot of traction.
Wow, I wasn't expecting you to be so bullish on this. I guess I have to take the counter. Look, this will only work if people have faith in the token being backed by the actual commodity, and these companies just don't have the track record. Some of them seem, frankly, pretty shady to me. They're not necessarily trading on regulated venues, and so the pricing will be really interesting to me, because having a token doesn't mean that you actually have legal rights to the underlying. And I think, once, if that fiction is ever exposed, or if it's exposed to be a fiction, then this whole thing just evaporates, right?
The pricing
Um,
thing is interesting. You bring that up because I was thinking that too. It's like, how are you going to, especially because the physical commodities are really, really tough. The pricing thing, you can say, well, we'll use a spot market in Chicago. It's like, really? What if I'm delivering electricity in or oil in Baton Rouge?
mhm.
I mean, there are frictions that take place. There are costs that take
Yeah,
place. There are a lot of things out there. Those, I think that the devil's going to be in the details of that.
sure.
I do sympathize with your with your comment about are these going to be legitimate places. They're going to what I think we'll probably see is third party administrators that come up like immediately if they're not already out there. The Citgos
Yeah,
of the world and places like that
yeah.
are that actually audit these guys on a regular basis to show,
Yeah, well,
hey,
it's the same thing with stable coins, right? I mean, this is,
same thing
like,
with
look,
stablecoins, same
you
thing with
gotta
hedge funds.
you got to have the reserves. You have to prove to me that you have the reserves.
Yeah,
And so I think you're right. There'll be, sort of growth in auditing firms and whatnot that will, inventory and do this stuff. Okay. Well, fascinating story. We'll obviously keep our eyes on that. I will not be
yeah,
trading tokenized metals anytime soon. One last story, Jimmie, that I wanted to get your thoughts on, and it's really crypto adjacent, although I think it will spill into crypto. And this, obviously pertains to your, kind of old cybersecurity hat that you used to wear at Duke as well. And this is really about the notion of hacking back, right?
yeah,
The hack back concept, right? Should private sector entities in America that have been victims of hacks by foreign countries or cyber criminals, should they be allowed to engage in offensive cyber operations, right? To, either as a deterrent to, recoup, let's say it was like crypto and, they want to get the crypto back, or let's say they identified the perpetrator and wanted to impose some type of punishment on them. And really, under existing law, mainly the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, private sector entities are not allowed to hack back. And look, I think there are good reasons for that. One is like you just don't want, some like company to like kickstart, like a global conflict, or,
yeah,
like our, so like I get that. But at the same time, it also means that our companies are just vulnerable to any, like there's, really, they have to defend themselves, and that's it. But they can't really impose a deterrent by going on offense, so it makes them more vulnerable. So that's the setup, Jimmie, to a really fascinating story involving a new order that was put out. I don't think it was an executive order, but it was a memo that the White House put out that empowers federal law enforcement to use cyber tools against transnational criminal organizations that operate in foreign jurisdictions to attack Americans. And importantly, the order allows the private sector to help and conduct those cyber operations. Now, importantly, Jimmie, is going to be under the direction, control, and authority of the U.S. government. So this is not, just allowing any old company to be a cowboy, right? And go out there and do, offensive cyber
yeah.
operations. Um, but it's kind of like, and I've seen people talk about this letter of marque, right? A letter of marque, right? Back in the old days, where the government would issue a letter of marque to a private ship, to say, hey, you could seize if you're out there on the high seas and you see an enemy vessel, feel free to take it and attack it. So what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously, look, crypto is used in a lot of these, hacks and whatnot,
Sure.
ransomware. So there, this is a crypto story, but I just think it's fascinating. One that's really not getting a lot of attention.
It is kind of fascinating. I mean, the use the government using third parties for basically these types of you know these types of activities. I mean, that's why Blackwater exists in places like that, right? That's what they do. And cyber version of Blackwater. I mean, we've used all kinds of contractors for years and years and years and forever, right? And so the fact that the federal government's doing it for
But
private
they don't go on
entities,
like they don't necessarily go on like offense though, do they?
really,
I don't know.
really, we can talk about that offline.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, like I'm just thinking like the Snowden stuff. Like I don't recall him like revealing anything that was about like
I mean, what about all the contractors we use to supplement military forces? You don't think they're
Yeah,
ever on the
fair enough.
offense?
Fair enough.
Okay, so
Yeah. I
and
mean, I think
so
this is more like informal though than like an actual government
so
contractor, right?
I don't. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, for
Yeah.
companies to do it themselves, private companies, I would say no for the reasons you list. But also, companies have two kind of ways they can get around this, right? One, they can buy better locks for the doors, and
Hmm.
secondly, they can buy insurance, right? I mean, everybody can buy insurance. There's no people out there sell
Yeah.
cyber insurance. It's a big business,
Sure.
selling
Sure.
all kinds of cyber insurance. You can buy better locks. I've mentioned before. I think that companies now are taking it much more seriously than they used to. I gave a talk. I've given several talks over the years, and people have always asked me, how do we stop this? It's like hold one CEO accountable. Hold one
Yeah.
CEO accountable. I mean, nobody is
But I
ever
mean,
held
like, is that
accountable for.
realistic though? With because now it's like every week we're hearing about these stories about the AI agents breaking out of their sandbox to engage. Like, like, is it realistic for companies to
I
have
mean,
every
I think it
door
was.
locked now? Like, you have to have right. Like, I get it. Like, it makes from a deterrent standpoint, right? If these transnational criminal organizations, which let's be honest, Jimmy, a lot of them are operating with either the explicit or implicit endorsement of
Oh, they're
Vladimir Putin or
actually,
some
yeah,
dick or
agents of the
yeah,
government, or yeah,
yeah.
actually, absolutely, agents of the government.
So if so it's really about imposing a deterrent effect, because otherwise you're just a sitting duck. I mean, I just don't think it's realistic in the age of these advanced models, AI models, to expect every door to be locked,
Well,
even at the best companies.
I think having the government do this is much better than arming every citizen and saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
go out there on the street, and if
Well, some people
this
would
is
say arm every citizen. So literally,
or
some
this is
Second
kind of
Amendment nuts.
like what was the movie about you and I've talked
War
about it
games.
before, where if you were going to commit a crime, they would come after you if the machine decided you were
Oh yeah,
you.
that's what the Tom Cruise
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. What
And
the
I'm
heck was the
drawing
name of
a
that?
Minority Report.
Minority Report. Yeah. I mean, it's very. It feels very much like that, doesn't it? But I think
I don't know.
if it's done by the government, that's one thing. The policy issues that could come about from something like this, the larger influence that these things could have, I think, is something that we have to be cognizant of.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think people should be able to
No,
protect themselves 100%. Should they be out hunting for the next person that's going to hurt them, or that they think might?
yeah.
I don't know that's right. I think you have
Well,
a
I
hundred
and I
percent right.
agree with you, and and the devil's always in the details, and we'll see
Yep.
how this takes shape. Like a lot of things, maybe it's just an announcement that never goes anywhere. I think the important thing, though, is that this is going to have a degree of government oversight, right? So you can't, as a private sector entity, just go out on your own and hack back, right?
Right.
You have to engage with the government. You have to notify them, and you have to have their explicit endorsement to do this. So that makes sense to me. And if you can kind of sort of formalize this in a way that is not sort of filled with sort of bureaucratic delays and everything like that. I mean, that'll be, I think, the real challenge, right? How do you sort of create this so it's agile and can respond relatively quickly with everyone in the loop?
Yeah.
Will be the real challenge. But
That will be a
interesting,
challenge.
nonetheless, and hopefully some random, like community bank isn't kickstarting, a cyber war with like North Korea or something like that.
We don't want that. We don't want
No,
that.
we don't want that. So on that happy note, Jimmy, all you community bankers out there listening, please don't get us into a war with North Korea. Okay,
No,
we already got one that we can't get out of in the Middle East, another one. So we don't want, and they're in our drinking water in Minnesota there,
yeah, I saw
Jimmy.
that.
That's not good either.
No.
So anyway, Jimmy,
Hey,
stay
and you
safe.
know what, Lee?
Yes.
We will probably need to start rescheduling for a different time on Friday for our podcast, because orientation at Duke starts next week. So
Oh
next week,
wow,
I get to
wow.
welcome my new Master of
The
Engineering
kids,
and FinTech students,
welcome everyone.
as well as a lot of other students at Duke University. If you're Around
Absolutely.
here, be very careful. Lots of students moving in, so don't go to Target. Don't drive around any of the
Oh, stay away
universities.
from
It's a
Target. Be
nightmare.
careful when you're driving because people are
Yep.
driving on streets that they've never been on before or anything like that. Yeah,
All that kind of
it's an
stuff's going
exciting
on.
time, but
But it's always an
yeah,
exciting time of the year, and I am
absolutely.
looking forward. We have some new swag this year. You're going to be wearing a brand new Duke
Well, I like it.
FinTech
I
baseball
like
cap.
it. All right. Well, we'll have to do an update on the incoming class next week.
We will do that.
All right, Jimmy. Take care.
Have a good weekend.